Good morning, all. I'm just checking with the finance chair as well as a few other board members before we get started. I see Ms. Oliver's joined us, but we'll give the others a chance to join.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, apologies, everyone. And if anyone is streaming YouTube, the chair is having some internet problems. He is almost on. He had to reboot and he will be joining shortly.
Oh, good morning, Christina. Can you hear me now? Hang on. Are you muted? Oh, okay.
Okay, I was muted, sorry. So yeah, so everyone's aware he's joining on the phone first until he can hopefully join on his computer. So we can get started.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I see it now. You mentioned it this morning. The computer appears to be up, so let me see if I can do that. I am let me move over. Yeah. Trying to get this set up here. Let me see if that. Okay.
So, Chairperson Walker, we can, I mean, if you want, the superintendent has a voiceover to start the meeting. So we could just get started with that while you set up. There's no visuals yet, if you can just hear the first part, if you would like that.
Yes,
Okay.
and good morning to all, and pardon the delay.
So, Superintendent, we'll hand it off to you. The first item is the resolution on exploring a Hartford Public Schools Foundation.
Thank you, Ms. Santiago. Good morning, everyone. Just a quick voice over here. Information that was already shared in the Family and Community Engagement Committee. So, as you all know, priority 4 for us is around, has a specific, I'm getting feedback on my end, Christina. I don't know if anyone else is, but.
I think it was real quick while he switched over devices.
Okay. As part of our priority 4, Chief Penn, his team, and several of us are really leaning into our financial sustainability strategy. And, as we look over the horizon to 2024, the fall of 2024, when ESSER ARP funds will have to be spent by, we have to think about how to sustain some of the work that we are leveraging currently with those funds. And also we have to think about the other backdrop that was always true for us prior to ESSER and ARP, which was our increasing operational costs and the fact that we foresee yet another deficit. And so as part of our exploration of ways to mitigate and identify a financial sustainability strategy, the request, I believe, through a resolution is for us to explore what it would look like, what it could potentially offer for us to have an education foundation. And so there are a few specific questions, some essential questions that we will be tasked to answer. One is, to look at, do a field scan analysis locally and perhaps across the country at some examples as to how have education foundations supported the implementation of strategic initiatives in school districts, with a specific eye toward urban districts. What are the implications for our capacity to take on this work, knowing that a foundation is a long-term commitment, and we have to think about what is the realistic timeline given the current capacity that we have. And in other communities, what role has the engagement of various stakeholders played in the development of a foundation? Again, this is truly exploratory, and as part of the research, I'm hoping to also identify if there are perhaps any other innovations or best practices or structures aside from a foundation that we could also leverage to address or enhance our financial sustainability strategy. I know that this was a voiceover, and I know it's only an exploration, but we felt that it was important to, at least give the overview to several committees. I'll pause there, Chairman Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Torres Rodriguez. This is information flow down, so I don't know if it's appropriate to open for a lot of questions, because my belief is that right now you may not have a lot of detailed answers. So I suppose if I had a question just to throw out more generally, is there some timeline as to when this exploration will commence, or do you need any actual approval or authorization from the school board to begin this exploration?
So I believe it's going to be in form of a resolution. What we have not discussed is any need that we might have for any use of funds, perhaps either to help us with any of the research that has to be conducted. We've not sat down internally yet, Mr. Chair, to discuss any of that.
Well, then I will maybe open the floor here to ask if there are any comments or questions from either board members, Ms. Oliver or Ms. Brody.
I just know I have a million questions that can't be answered. So to your point, Chairman Walker, I don't know that we could even have a discussion.
Right. So, and I share exactly your the position that you're in. It's very preliminary. So that being said, I will say then generally the prospects sounds exciting, and it aligns with the idea that with any potential crisis, there is always the opportunity for a different type of solution. And so this sounds like at least a potential opportunity or solution for what would be probably some financial shortages in the years to come. So we look forward to what you will present to us, and we can evaluate more when we get a better picture of what that future would look like.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can, I did send board members a date for a mini retreat at which the topic will be this, so the board members will have the opportunity. So if you have not clicked on your availability, please do so as soon as you can.
Thank you, Ms. Santiago. I think I did see that. So if we are ready to move on with the rest of the agenda for the meeting, and again, pardon my technical challenges here. It's Monday morning, and getting the internet up where I am working and so forth and so on was a little bit of an ordeal. So let me see. And Chief Penn, I don't know if you're driving the discussion here. I see first thing here is a continuation, and it's around community school contracts, several of which I believe were talked about in, I think, Family and Community Engagement Committee. So this will be an opportunity to talk about them for a second time.
That is correct, Mr. Chair, and Chief Black Burke is here to help present on that topic as well.
Okay.
You're Chief Blackburg, you're on mute. Sorry, if you're that's what I did earlier.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize about that. I was like, hopefully my internet is acting correctly. So good morning again. And thank you, Chairman Walker, and thank you, Chief Penn. So yes, we did discuss, and we took some time to talk through the continuation contracts for our community schools. And I know that from our Family and Community Engagement Committee meeting, there were some outstanding items that we need to get to board members. And Ms. Santiago, I know that we've been compiling those, so you can have them. But I did want to take time during this finance meeting to really just give eyes into the financial component of the continuation grants for community schools. And so, Christina, oh, thank you for putting it up. Much appreciated. All right. And so as you can see here, the continuation amounts are listed here, as well as the source of funding for the community school continuation contracts. So between ESSER and our Title I funds, that is where the funds will come from. Also listed here, I do want to highlight the term. So the term would be from September 2022 through June of 2023. We have several schools and agencies that will continue. Active City, they are assigned to Parkville School for $75,000. We have the Boys and Girls Club of Hartford. They'll continue their work at Belizzi and West Middle for a total. I need to make this bigger on my end, Christine. I can't see that.
Nope.
For a
500.
total. Thank you. Thank you. Career Resources, they will continue at Milner Middle School, working alongside Catholic Charities for $75,000. Catholic Charities, they are at Parkville School, McDonough School, and Milner for $925,000. And also, I'm not going through and not voicing over the actual activities and programs that they are doing throughout the school building, because we did discuss those during our Family and Community Engagement Committee meeting. The Village for Families and Children, they are at several schools, including Martin Luther King Middle School, Burr Middle School, Burns Latino Studies, Sand School, Fred D. Wish, and MD Fox. And so their total award across schools, so this is not just for one school, but across all of their schools, is 1.425. And sorry, Christina, I probably said that wrong, but I'm trying to look at this from my phone, everyone. Blue Hill Civic Association, their total award would be $285. And oh, did I go out? I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, you temporarily muted,
I apologize.
temporarily.
Thank you. I apologize for that, everyone. And then Blue Hill Civic Association, they will continue their work at Weaver High School. And that award would be $285,000. And so those are all of the contracts that we would be continuing. And again, we did go into some details as far as programmatic pieces and evaluation pieces at the Family and Community Engagement Committee meeting on Thursday. And there are a few pieces that are still outstanding, but really wanted to take time to look at the term, the source of funding, as well as the overall dollar amounts for each of these community school continuation contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Blackburk. If there's no other comments, I don't know if Chief Penn, if you have anything to add. I was going to open it to questions. I see Chairman Rigor has joined us this morning. And Chairman, it appears you have a question. So would you provide it to the meeting?
Yes, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Chairman Walker. Quick question, and I'm just trying to get a sense when I look at these contracts and the numbers, and granted each organization has a different number of schools that they're catering to. Do we have like a baseline program that we're looking for these programs, and how much does that cost? Because when I look at, for example, I think Active City with one school at $75,000, and then I look at I think Blue Hill Civic Association with another one school at $285. In my mind, just trying to reconcile like what's the difference in programming that accounts for that, and then.
You just muted.
Chairman Rigor, you went
Sorry.
muted
Yeah.
for a second.
Apologies. So what I'm trying to get my head around is there a baseline programming that we expect our community partners to do? If so, that would be great to know. And then I guess part B to that question is when I look at Active City at $75,000 and I look at Blue Hills Civic Association at $285,000, what's accounting for that? Like, what's accounting for that delta in spend, right? Like, what is it that Blue Hills is doing, I guess, above and beyond Active City that accounts for $285,000?
So, Chief Blackburk, I don't know if you're you're the person to respond to that, I believe, or if Chief Penn wants to respond.
Yes, no, thank you, Chairman Walker. I just didn't want to break protocol and start speaking before being acknowledged. So, but yes, I'll go ahead and respond to that. And thank you, Chairman Rigger, for the question. And I shared during like our Family and Community Engagement Committee that yes, there is variance as far as dollar amounts because we have two organizations, Active City as well as Career Resources, that are working in collaboration with a lead agency partner, and they're delivering a specific program to a school. So Active City is tied to Parkville in conjunction with Catholic Charities, and Career Resources is tied to Milner in conjunction with Catholic Charities. The $285,000 amount that you see for Weaver, when we looked at a couple of years ago when we were looking at how we came up with a formula or a dollar amount to base our community schools on, in that process and working with Educational Resource Strategies, ERS, we took time to look at the number of students potentially that would be served in a school, the type of pipeline services and programs. And so thinking about those pieces overall, anywhere between 250 to 285,000 is the number that we landed on to provide those types of services across schools. But the two agencies that are highlighted for 75,000, they are offering very specific programs to those schools. So they aren't considered to be a lead agency partner per se, but they are a contracted partner providing services to that school. So when we did an RFP last year, that RFP was open. And so agencies across our city were able to provide and respond to that RFP. And so those two entities did respond to that RFP. They weren't asking to serve, 200 or 300 students. They were asking to serve a very specific number that equated to that dollar amount that they asked for.
Thank you. So if I heard correctly, the best practice was for, I guess, the lead agency somewhere between 250 to 280. So I guess my question is, this is more of a finance question. What is the price per student that we're paying? And then once we get that number, let's say if it's $100 per student, whatever that number is, does that back into the other contracts that we have in place and the amount of kids that we're serving? Like, so basically what I'm saying is we should have a per student or per head dollar amount. Correct?
Mr. Chair, you mind if I respond to that?
I'm sorry, Chief Penn. No, I encourage your feedback here because I'm not certain the best approach. So you may have better insights on that.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly go back and calculate an estimated per student cost under these programs. Although I would point out that student participation varies pretty dramatically from school to school and from program to program. So if you look at some of the work that's being provided by Village for Families and Children, there may not be uptake by every student on every activity that's offered by that provider. So I think we look at it from a point of view of how much staff do we estimate that the provider would have to put into it, and we come up with a reasonable per hourly rate, and so that's how we came up with the range that we talked about, saying, okay, if we offer these services and we know that we have a certain staffing need on behalf of the partner to do that, what looks reasonable to us is, like was discussed, was somewhere between 250 and 285 or somewhere in that range. We certainly could go back to the prior year and look at actual participation versus actual cost and try to come up with a per student calculation in terms of what was put together.
Yeah, so Chief Penn, I appreciate that. I guess in my mind, wouldn't staffing be a byproduct of the student needs, right? So like staffing would fluctuate based on how many students you have in a program. And what I'm trying to figure out is, okay, well, granted, understand that every program varies and there's fluctuation. We should have a per student price, and then that should be reflected with the staffing that's needed. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to be mindful that if a program doesn't have the expected enrollment, that we're paying accordingly.
Yeah, I
So-
think I understand what you're saying, although I guess the counter to that from the partner's perspective would be that they hire in anticipation of a certain level of participation from the of the students. And then if we don't see the participation that we expect, I think it becomes more of a conversation for the follow-on year or to see if it repeats going forward, to say, do we want to not provide that anymore because we had low participation?
Well, yes, I think that's fair. I would love to see, and maybe this is not a finance question, if that is the case, because, I think as a board, right, fiduciary responsibility, right? So if we're paying let's say, I'm just using just imaginary numbers. Let's say if we're paying a contract of 2 million and they're expected to serve 200 kids and they only see 100 kids, right? That community partner is going to get the 200 million. I don't think it behooves us to wait until the next year to have the conversation. I would love to see what type of mitigation plans or strategies they're going to put in place in the current academic year to get to that 200 student count.
So, Chief Blackburg, you want to respond?
Thank you, Chairman Walker, and thank you, Chief Penn. And agree with what Chief Penn shared. And the only piece that I would add is that community schools, they touch all students within a building through various programs. So yes, there is a per student piece as far as it relates to an extended day program. However, during a school day, during a school year, that lead agency partner, they are providing services and programming to every student in that building. And in the continuation applications that we had, they also list out their budget and how they plan to utilize those dollars. So just wanted to highlight that piece, that in addition to the extended day program, as Chief Penn referenced, there is also an ask of that agency partner to provide services and programming that's going to touch all students in a building.
If I may weigh in to Chief Blackburg, I was going to ask for maybe an action from this presentation. My belief is what you're providing here is great. It shows the scope and type of services that are being offered, and this is appropriate. At this finance committee level, I think an additional level of information, which would be, as you were suggested, showing kind of the how things are organized financially. Like, it may be nice to see behind each of these line items, if the partner is just a contracted person, to be able to see visually a structure of financially, here's how this is going. There's a lead partner, there's certain contracted partners, so that, and then there's a scope of services. And so I think what I'd like to see come out of that is kind of addressing what Chief Penn is saying. There's a range of services. Most of these services, what I would call labor intensive, in that there's going to be a certain number of staff that's needed to provide it. And there's going to be some anticipated number of students that they're planning to serve, so that we can see that the charges are at least reasonable and customary. I mean, that's the thing from a financial standpoint. That's what I think I'd like to see. And I think it'll be helpful here. And I think the point that I think that Phil talked about, it's worth looking at as you move forward from the plan into actual execution, to then begin to have some, as we look at report outs of this, to see if the actual executed program actually achieved its anticipated student engagement goals, or, and if whether it achieved its community engagement goals, or whatever the goals of the program are. But at this level, I'm just looking for a plan. And so the plan that I think would be helpful here financially, as I said, would be this, the financial structure of the provider, the scope of what they're providing, the number of staff they think they're going to employ, and the number of students they think they're going to be serving, or community members they're going to be serving, so that we can begin to look at this number more from a cost per staff member, reasonable charges and things of that nature. Is that available, or is that something that can be provided as additional information behind this type of presentation?
I read your lips, Mr. Walker, so I know you said Chief Blackburg, so that's fine. Yes, so we do have the continuation applications. As I also shared in family and community engagement, that they do have to complete an actual work plan, and that is what guides their work. And in that work plan, it states that this is the pipeline service we are looking to achieve. We are going to serve 25 students during the school day. We're going to partner with United Way Leaders. So right now, that is what they've been asked to do. It's start working on those work plans, of course, pending approval of these contracts. So we do have that in their continuation application, and they have to provide that work plan to us, as exactly what Mr. Roger was referring to. And they also do that in collaboration, as I shared during the FCE committee, in looking at school improvement plans and having those conversations with building leadership. So Christina, I will add that to our short list. And I think you have the other two documents already. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Chief Blackburg, I'm thank you for your response. I was just trying to bring some additional information to make this meeting, financial committee meeting, a little bit different than the FCE meeting in terms of what we will look at. That's it.
Yes.
And Board Member Brody, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. So my question is more so, and I don't know if it was captured in committee, is more so, okay, what you're requesting on Mr. Walker is what they're planning to do. I want to know what they actually did. Oh, because for the first part of their contract with us. So for last school year, I'm looking for what their response to what they were going to deliver on, and the actual deliverables, like what did they actually accomplish?
Board Member Brody, I think you're offering that as a comment, and if I can take what you're saying and then offer the Chief of Blackburg, I agree with what Board Member Brody is asking for at this time. I would prefer if in the moving forward plan that what Board Member Brody is asking for is what we look at towards the end of the school year, so it can be input as we look towards, do we continue with them and at what rate? Because at this point now we're confronting, here's a budget, do we approve it or not? I think if we had in May or June how well different groups did, we may have had some different decisions in terms of which partners we want to continue to use this year versus not. So I'm only putting that flavor on it because at this point, I don't know if we can totally redo everything, but definitely moving forward, we should have a time to look at performance and the end analysis of the level of, you get it, plans versus actuals. But let me ask, in the moment, Board Member Brody, are you wanting to see that for the prior school year, just as input for you to help you with decision making now?
Absolutely.
Okay, so take it as an action, Chief Blackburg. Then if you can provide that for, I guess I would call it the 2021 to 2022 school year, and maybe just provide it to us as a supplemental document to help us in decision making, that will be helpful. But I certainly would like to see it as part of the process moving forward. Like,
Thank you, Chairman Walker. And so, yes, in my conversation with Ms. Santiago and even during our FCE committee meeting, we were just trying to just be very concrete on what the ask was. So this is a little bit different than what has been shared with Ms. Santiago, but that's fine. We will do our best to get that information. And then secondly, also want to highlight, as I said in the FCE committee meeting, that at incremental points last year, we did raise and shared with FCE committee where we were concerning community schools, and we'll continue to do that, as you mentioned during the FCE committee meeting, Mr. Walker. So definitely it's on there. We'll make sure that whether it's, I think you said during FCE, like bi-monthly or maybe quarterly, just having that update so folks are aware and in a different place as it relates to the community school contracts. So we'll add that and we'll go from there, Christina. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Chief Blackburg. And I'm not want to speak totally from Ms. Santiago. Some of these comments were going to be referenced to what's presented to the Finance Committee, but I do understand that it probably is fine to share it with both committees. Is there a question from Board Member Oliver?
Hi, yes, thank you, Chairman. That was actually going to be my comment. So I think both you and Chief Blackburg already covered it. So thank you.
Thank you for your efficiency, Board Member Oliver. If there are no further questions, I believe we're ready to proceed. And guess just as a point of process here with Chief Blackburg or Ms. Santiago, is there an actual decision that needs to be made here? Are we needing to approve these being moved forward to the full board?
Yes. Normally, no, we know that we have a few outstanding items, but you say
Yes.
move forward pending that the board receives the requested items.
And okay, if because that's how I wanted to shape it, that I didn't want to hold it hostage for those items, but I am believing those items are going to be needed to make a decision. And if I can preempt comments, I think at this point, this continuing contract needs to be part of the overall business meeting, and maybe not part of the consent agenda, because it feels like there may be need for a little bit of discussion about this if people get the additional information and data that has been requested. So that being said, let me put it out as a motion to move this continuation budget to the full committee pending receiving the additional data requested from district leadership. Is there concurrence from Board Member Oliver or Rigor or Brody?
It's Kim Oliver. I agree.
Okay, and I think that's a thumbs up from Chairman Rigor. So great. I think we can move this forward. And Chief Blackburg, you have a laundry list. Thank you for your work. I'm sorry we didn't. Hopefully it didn't feel like we were piling on, but this is these types of things of high interest in the community, and folks just want to know what's all happening, that they're getting their money's worth, and that the program is reaching its actual intent. And so thank you in advance for the work you'll be doing.
Thank you. Have a good morning.
All right, Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Chairman, I think we're going next to Chief
You're on mute.
Avila for the next 3 items. The
You are on
first
mute,
of
Walker.
which is Curriculum Associates Elevation Platform.
Apologies for being on mute. Thank you, Chief. And I was saying that, but I guess there was no audio coming out. So, Chief Ava, I will hand the floor to you.
Good morning, everyone. I am going to hand it over to Dr. Negron because the first item is hers and the following 2 are mine. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Negron.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chief Avila. At the last Teaching and Learning Committee, we discussed a platform which is called Elevation. And this is a platform for ease of accessing multiple student data sources and assessment results of multilingual learners to allow to engage in programmatic decisions and inform students' personalized plans. The platform will be accessible to all of our schools and also to anyone who has PowerSchool access. And this is the reason why we want to bring Elevation as one of our platforms is that we're trying to transition to an electronic multilingual compliance process. So currently a lot of this forms, documents are housed in like the old way of the files with the paper, and we're trying to move to an electronic way of doing so. So we believe having the platform will create more efficiencies throughout the district. So as part of the discussion 2 weeks ago, we also shared the implementation plan that we would utilize to bring the platform into HPS, and also provided a little bit of details on the feedback that we gathered from the pilot that was done last year with TESOL and bilingual resource teachers. The cost is $80,175. $6,000 of that is towards the professional learning, and this will be covered under Title III.
So thank you. Thank you, Chief Negron. Was there any information from the presentation that you wanted to share, or I know you talked through most of it, I believe. Okay, so let me just say that there is a short presentation which was sent to the board members. I don't know if the general public has it. It itemizes, I think, the products that need to be purchased, and then there is some overview of what it's going to provide. Are there questions about this particular offering? Not hearing none. I will say that my question is that the users of this. Thank you, Santiago. Yes, for those who have access to board docs, I will emphasize it is available to you. The users of this program, is it primarily going to be instructional staff, teachers, paras, school level staff? That's the users of this particular tool?
Chairman Walker, there are multiple users. As I indicated, this is all to make sure we're under compliance as it relates to multilingual learners. So often it would entail, right, teams going in and looking how a multilingual learner has been performing to be able to then identify what should be next on that particular student's personalized plan. At the school level, like school leadership would be accessing the platform to be able to see, you know, how are all multilingual learners doing in the particular school as they're progressing through their levels of English acquisition, for example. So again, there are multiple users that would have access to the platform.
Okay. sorry. Thank you, Chief McGrone, for that. I will again offer a comment that moving forward, if this goes to be implemented, then I would like to have feedback flow up from those users as to whether this tool is indeed delivering what it needs to provide. We certainly need this type of platform, but I'm also interested that on the ground that it actually works and performs and does what it needs to, and that if not, then we are available to somehow provide modifications to make it actually achieve its goals and its ends. Given that comment, I will stop there to say, can I put a motion out to approve this moving forward to the full board? Board members, Brody, Rigor, and Oliver, are we fine with approving this moving forward to the full board? Yes, I see from Chairman Rigor, Ms. Oliver, Ms. Brody.
I'm okay with moving forward. Thank you.
Yes. So I am assuming here that we have approval here to move this forward. Thank you, Board Member Brody. So this will move forward to the full board. I don't believe there's any actions other than, I think if approved, I would just like to see feedback of its use and people really able to use and benefit from it. So let's see, Chief Penn, are you, oh, no, Chief Avila is doing the next two items. So I'll yield the floor to Chief Avila to provide information on these next two.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. Believe the first one is revision learning. And Christina, I don't know if you're going to post it or I just want me to just talk over it.
Just talk over it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, and I could just share the blurb right here.
Perfect. So we did discuss this in our last teaching and learning committee, and Revision Learning is an organization that has worked with the district for several years. Initially, they worked with the district in supporting the assessing of new administrators and supporting them to be ready to evaluate teachers. And now they've expanded their work. They last year worked with Harford High and supporting their instructional walkthroughs as well as the instruction in classrooms, and also calibrating with the instructional leadership team in supporting the level of instruction. And there's several proposals that are here with Revision Learning. There are three components. One for Harford High that will be continuing the work as well as deepening the work for Harford High. That will be coming from Commissioners Network, and that is one aspect of it. The second piece of the work is supporting McDonough, because McDonough Middle School is also a Commissioner Network school, and the idea of part of their Commissioners Network application was having a through line of support with teachers from and administration from middle school through the high school, because McDonough Middle School feeds into Harford High. And so there's a special collaboration that will happen with teachers as well as administration through this partnership. And then the third aspect is working at the district level that will support not only EDSLs, but also will support principals in calibrating, and also supporting Dr. Curtis as she leads the PDAC committee. And PDAC stands for Professional Development and Evaluation Committee. It is a committee that the state requires each school district to have. And the state is changing the evaluation system, and Revision Learning is on that particular state committee as well, and will be supporting us being proactive and ahead of the game and making any possible changes that we might need to make, and to be ready for the state changes as well.
Thank you, Chief Avila. So are there questions or comments about this revision learning? Let's see. Board Member Oliver.
Hello, yes, thanks, Chairman, and thanks, Chief Avila. A quick question, not in terms of the actual content of services from revision, but just wanting this might be a refresher of people's feedback, our staff's feedback, as it relates to the work that revision would be assisting us with, and how that's incorporated and helps to shape the work moving forward.
Chief Avila, feel free to respond.
No problem. Yes, Ms. Oliver, I submitted all of the survey data to Ms. Santiago, and she's in the process of organizing it and sharing it with you. If you'd like me to give you a brief summary, I can share that, but she actually has the survey data. Would you like?
I think I was thinking more of just the fact that you are doing surveys and helping to inform the work moving forward and making, if you need to, modifications, et cetera, working with revision.
So yes, we do surveys on 3 aspects. We do surveys with the new administrators and the professional learning and the assessments that they have in the beginning. We've also done surveys at Hartford High as well. And then the EDSLs will be doing surveys. They haven't had that much opportunity. They've only had 1 session last year with revision learning, and they will also, that information is also with Ms. Santiago as well. So all stakeholders that have been involved with revision learning we do surveys to not only, as you said, to sort of guide the work and also know the need, and also make sure that we've met our objectives from that survey data.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, then I'm going to offer thanks, Chief Avila, for sharing this. My only comment again is I would want to this year look for feedback from the instructional staff as to how effective this work is. I think that the feedback occasionally get is that we get consulting and services that some are very beneficial to teachers, and others they're left shrugging like, what is this about? So like to somehow have a way to get teacher feedback about the value and effectiveness of this and the goals. But let's move forward to contract continuation approval of the International Institute of Restorative Practices. Chief Avila.
So last year was the first time that we were able to provide restorative practices for all school staff, and that includes not just teachers, but also the social support staff, the social workers, even SSOs, the behavior techs, student engagement specialists, family community support service providers. So the whole realm of anyone who services a school inside the school had the opportunity to participate in restorative practices through IIRP. That's what we call it for short, for the International Institute of Restorative Practices. This was really supportive in the way of implementing restorative practices. I just want to highlight in the past, it was about 5 members from a school that received the professional learning from the previous consultant, where last year we were able to train internal staff members so that we can keep moving forward with the practices and for sustainability, as well as make sure that all of our members were trained and had the first level of professional learning regarding restorative practices. This year in this contract focuses on deepening the work. It will focus on adding to the number of people who are trainers, to also continue the work on a regular basis. And the idea and the goal is to have almost a person per building that is trained. Right now, we only have 9 members that are trained. And additionally, also deepening the work with focusing primarily on different aspects that will deepen the work beyond circles and having restorative measures at schools. So really thinking about how we do that with leadership in particular, and then also the next level of work that they are suggesting that will deepen our work with social connections and deepening relationships with students, so that restorative practices is really embedded in our schools as just a way of work, as opposed to something that is that's on the side and that has to be done. And so that is the next level of work that is part of this contract.
Thank you, Chief Avila. Questions or comments? Board members? Let's see. Okay. Chief Avila, there doesn't seem to be any questions, and I will add that I have a generalized comment, homework from me, right? That I think this is deepening our skill with restorative practices is an excellent thing to do. Again, what I'm trying to understand is how we implement accountability for behavior, conduct, and things in school. And so for me, I want to learn more about that, because in my sense, the restorative practices is post there being an accountable set of actions. Now I want to bring you back into community. So maybe I will do some learning with you, with teachers, to understand the whole picture of how this all works. So that said, these 2 issues here, I think, are on the floor for approval to move forward. This is 1.04, which is contract renewal with Revision Learning, and then 1.05 is contract continuation approval for the Institute of Restorative Practices and expanding that work and training within our school staff. So I'm making a motion to approve moving both of these contract renewal and contract continuation approval to the full board. Is there approval from the board members? Board Member Oliver, Chairman Rigor, Board Member Brody. I think I saw a yes and supportive, and yes from Board Member Brody. And let's see here. Chairman Rigor, thank you for your involvement and engagement today. And Board Member Oliver, I believe you're supportive as well, and she has. So I'm going to say this has been approved to move forward to the full board. So at this point, all of the contract continuations, renewals, and then the new contract approval have all been approved for elevating to the full board. So thank you to the board members for their participation and their engagement with this discussion this morning. There are 2 additional items that I think may fall to you, Chief Penn, and actually, I keep hitting the wrong button here on my system. I am actually happy that you are here to discuss these. I see a preliminary end-of-year financial report and then a update on return of investment. I realize you've been tagged with this once or twice as kind of a homework assignment, so I am pleased that you have your opportunity to give us your assessment on these two areas. So Chief Penn, kind of hand the floor to you for both of these.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm noticing from Board Member Brody's comments that I got a date wrong in the financial report. And I'm seeing that in the first sentence. It's not the year ended June 30th, 2002. It should be June 30th, 2022. But the key point in that whole memo is that we ended the year with a pretty sizable surplus, which is what we've been signaling the whole year along. Now, I would caution that this is still unaudited results, but it's pretty indicative of where I think the full year is going to play out. And what I mean by that is, in accounting convention, period 12, which is June, technically didn't close until August 12th. That's how the city operates in terms of closing out its year-end financials. And then from there on, there's an accounting convention called period 13. Period 13 actually stays open all the way until your audit closes in mid-December, so that if there's any final adjustments that need to get made between the closeout of the year in mid-August and the end of the calendar year when the audit is issued, you can make those things. So bottom line is, you'll see a kind of enumerated list of changes that have happened so far in period 13. At the time that I put this memo together, and this is one that we shared with Marb a couple of weeks ago. And so, we are on track, as the memo indicates, of ending the year with a surplus of around 10.4 million. And I would actually probably codify that a little bit and say, with two additional changes that we put through literally this week, it's probably going to land somewhere just over 10.3 million. So there's been ongoing conversations, I know, around the use of that surplus with the city. I believe 8 million of that was intended to be set aside for the school construction projects. As you know, we're kind of on a pay-as-you-go strategy without the ability to bond right now. And then the remaining 2.3-ish million is in a period of conversation as to its use. And in particular, we've had a lot of conversations around this new program targeted at attendance. I use the term early promise because it's the really easy one for me to remember. But it's about jumpstarting that program. And I believe there's a conversation scheduled with members of the mayor's office later on. I want to say it's either this week or next week for the ongoing dialogue around the reuse of those funds. Now, a lot of that surplus was obviously driven out of the position vacancies that we've been talking about all year. We had some additional upsides in terms of what we paid for tuition for special ed during the year. That was a positive. We had a negative in the sense of some of the transportation costs that we incurred during the year. But at the end of the day, we still wound up with about an eight-digit surplus. And I would characterize that as probably not repeating this year. I think there's been a lot of activity around our hiring processes to really push hard to limit the number of position vacancies that we have. It's been done by our Office of OTM and others around the organization. I don't think we've completely solved the vacancy issue by any means, but I don't think it's going to occur to the same level of magnitude as what we saw in 21-22. But overall, certainly a positive result to have the ability and flexibility to use that amount of surplus to meet some of the ongoing needs of the district and serve for some future planning as well. And in terms of the ESSER spending that we incurred, it was definitely below what we expected. A lot of that, again, was driven by the, Christina, you can roll down on the memo if you don't mind to the where the ESSER piece picks up. Definitely below what we had intended, but a lot of that was also driven by the the vacancies that we had for some of the intended ESSER spending that we anticipated along the way. But we did wind up spending a total of about 35 million so far across the 3 grants that are out there. We are very, very close, obviously, to fully expending ESSER 1, and we'll be closing out that grant at the end of this month, which means all the remaining spending will be in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, also known as ARP. And, I think there's a very robust plans that have been put together over the past, say, 2 to 2.5 months around how to ratchet up that spending activity. And more importantly, to also have a plan B availability for us, so that if we are again in a situation where staffing that was intended to be hired out of ESSER does not come through for us, we can pivot into some use of that plan B expenditures instead. What we don't want to have is a situation where we get into year three and there's still, $75 or $80 million left to spend. That just won't be a realistic amount to try and spend down in a year. And as a matter of fact, we were just notified this week that we were given another ARP-related grant award of like 1.2 million that we're now going to have to figure out a way of what's the best utilization for that money going forward. And that we knew it was coming. I think we were just a little bit surprised at the order of magnitude of what was awarded to us. I did include in the package commentary on the month of July. As you might expect, there's just not a lot of activity that goes on in the district during July. You're mostly doing work to get ready for the upcoming school year. So you'll have encumbrances that are tied out to things like all your purchases to open up the year, maintenance and service contracts. You'll encumber some of your utilities, of course, for the full year at the outset. And then you've got a lot of your insurance contract renewals take place in July. And any of our 12-month employees, of course, would have pay dates in July as well. But if you look at the total amount of spending that we had, in the month, it was only about 6 million. And even that was down pretty dramatically from last year, as we had a high level of claim activity in our health insurance in the year ago period that did not repeat in July of 2022. Obviously, things get a lot busier, as we get everybody back on the payroll, teachers in particular. So I would expect another quiet month for the month of August when we report on that in our next meeting. And then activity on spending will pick up quite a bit as everybody comes back that are the 10 and 11 month employees that we have. But overall, just a very healthy result for the 21-22 year. Chairman, I'll be happy to take questions on that if there are any before rolling into the ARRI conversation.
Thank you, Chief Penn. Are there any questions among board members? Any questions? If not, hang on, I thought board member Brody, you just rubbing your neck? Was that a question?
No, I had a question.
Okay.
I was trying to look for the raise hand, so I just
Yeah, no problem. I too was kind of okay. Please do. Questions?
Yeah, as you know, I am a firm believer in our children having unified arts. And I'm hearing surplus, I'm hearing foundations, but I'm not hearing investments in the unified arts, so that could be available to all of our schools. So I know that is not a question for Mr. Penn, but I just wanted to, say that here, because we're saying millions of dollars and our children still don't have that opportunity. So I just wanted to make mention of that, Chairman. And I'm thinking he may have had to step away for a quick second. Am I able to read? Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
So
I apologize. I heard your question, Chief Brody. I somehow had one of these mini family call things for a second, but can I just elevate your? I want to elevate Board Member Brody's comment. Because I have a similar comment that I'm capturing at least Board Member Brody's comment whenever I talk to anybody and mention that we have surplus, people immediately have one or two things they're asking. Well, why don't we handle these long-standing issues? And so I will say, even though Chief Penn can answer it, the Unified Arts is a situation where even as we're looking forward towards this new foundation, if I was ever going to raise money for anything in the district to help us, I would certainly think that arts and music would be the thing that's worth telling folks to dig a little deeper, you know, open up a little bit more to provide these additional things that clearly benefit our youth and that they don't currently get to experience now. So any feedback on that, or it doesn't have to be Chief Penn, but other members can also provide comment.
Mr. Chairman, let me just say one thing, and I don't
Yes.
disagree with any of what you or Board Member Browdy is saying. I agree. I think there's an increased need for unified arts across the district. The one distinguishing point I might make, though, is that remember that these surpluses are usually geared around one-time spend, right? The funds don't carry over from one year to the next. So it's almost like you have to find a way of spending it in the year that the surplus takes place. And I think when we think about a more robust unified arts program, that's cost that's going to be ongoing for some time. But I'm happy to take the commentary back to the superintendent when I see her tomorrow in our one-on-one to make mention of the fact that we do need a plan around how to better integrate a more robust integrated arts program into our ongoing budget. So point noted.
Right. So, and then let me then float an idea. I went to Charter Oak Cultural Center. They have a music program where they have a room full of instruments. One of those big one-time spends could possibly be, right, the district outfitting orchestra at a school level. One of the huge entry costs to getting music started is that you probably have $500,000 to $1 million worth of instrumentation that you need to buy just to get students introduced to them and actually to build the infrastructure for an orchestra. Albeit I agree with Chief Penn that we have that ongoing cost of maintenance, getting a full-time teaching staff for music. But I'm just saying, if it was a one-time, one-shot deal, could we do some good in the world? Things like that be something that I would think of in terms of building some of our arts infrastructure.
Yeah, actually, to that point, Mr. Chairman, there's actually an audit of all the musical instruments across the district right now to see which ones are in disrepair, to see which ones need to be replaced. And there's an alternative funding source in ESSER that we've got planned to spend upwards of $4 million on replacing whatever needs to be replaced, or if there's new instruments that need to come in. So, you know, it may not be out of this surplus funding source, but there is an ongoing plan. And our head of curriculum that oversees that area is literally in the process of doing the audit right now.
Thank you for that feedback. I'd be interested to hear follow-up as some of that goes along. We have some success stories coming out of that. That'd be good to hear.
Yeah.
And to report to the community that, hey, that we're doing some stuff around at least music. Right?
Yeah, the board will definitely have a part to play in that because it's going to have to go out to RFP to replace it, just given the scope of the purchase. So, you know, when the time eventually comes to award the contract to whoever we're buying the instruments from, the board will definitely have visibility into that process, into how the audit played out and how we identified that need.
Right. If there aren't other questions, then I guess Board Member Oliver, please join in.
Thank you. Quick question. So I know we talked about all this great work that is being done by the district to really mitigate the staffing challenges that drove a lot of the dollars. Any concerns about staffing challenges from our external partners that then impact our work? Are we having any of those conversations, and just the concerns of seeing our spending slow because our vendors or partners can't provide services on time? Is that right?
Board Member Oliver, I don't want to speak for every chief in terms of their interaction with those outside vendors, but I don't think it's unusual to expect those vendors to be impacted and our partners to be impacted by exactly the same thing we're feeling right now. And in the general malaise in the whole labor market right now, right? You see an unemployment rate that basically speaks to almost full employment, and yet we know we have all these openings. And so you're right. It's something we're definitely paying attention to in terms of making sure that people can still do the work because they have the right staff to be able to do it. I heard from one of our key vendors within the last 2 weeks on their slow response time on things that I was asking for, and they admitted they're operating on a skeleton crew because they lost 3 key people recently and haven't been able to rehire them. And part of me wants to say that frankly is your problem as a vendor, but I mean, it's like, I understand what they're going through because I see it internally for ourselves too.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I was wondering about it because I know, to your point, this is a market issue. So that's helpful to know that those conversations are happening, but obviously every issue is different and every vendor is different.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, and Ms. Oliver, I still can't figure out where everybody went, right? So we had all these people before the pandemic and, now they've stopped. They're not available anymore. I don't know where they went. Yeah.
So Chief Penn, if I could ask one question in this space, it's staffing, but because it's such an immediate need, I'm wondering if there's any way to leverage our current surplus to be helpful. We still have some staffing shortages because we weren't able to hire all the teaching staff we knew we
Right.
needed. And that's not surprising because the number was big. But it also seems like we have shortages of substitutes. And so I'm kind of wondering, they've been saying for a long time that more financial incentives could potentially entice more people to become substitute teachers and help in that way.
Yeah.
Any way to use our surplus to kind of put a shot in the arm, some type of one-time incentive to get people to jump in to be substitute teachers? Because that's more of a short-term staffing need. You don't need them for 5 years, but you do need them maybe this year and next year.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mr. Chair. And the way we teed that up was we had both retention money and new hire money built into our ESSER spends, specifically around those points, trying to generate, a higher level of hiring into that. And then in response to where we were versus the market, we upped our daily rate on our substitute teachers pretty dramatically last year. Because we knew we weren't competitive anymore. We heard what a nearby competitor was doing, and competitor, that's a bad word, what a nearby education agency was doing. And, we realized we were off the market. And so we made that change last year, as a matter of fact. But you're right. I mean, we're at the point where I'm not even sure it's a money issue anymore because of the way that we've made some of those changes. I just don't think that the people are out there in the way that they used to be.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, just to add one more point, I'm not 100% sure we want to engage in an outright bidding war among other education agencies to try and get these folks on board.
No, thank you, Chief Penn. I based on what you said, though, I would like to see maybe a report out of that kind of market analysis so we can actually report and be sure that we are really hitting a competitive target for substitute teachers, because that to me seems to be our one shot at this point of offering some immediate help to schools that need some short-term staffing support.
Yeah, and along those lines, finally, Mr. Chairman, that's one of the contracts that we're going to be negotiating this fall. So that'll be part of the initial pre-work around that. Is a scan across other districts to see what's being paid. That's one of the unions that we did not negotiate last year. That's up for cycle this year.
Okay, thank you very much. I know. Hang on, because I have a time check here. I'm going to let you loose to talk about the ROI, if you can go through that.
Sure. All right. So this is it's a short presentation. So, where we are, the academic ROI is a concept that's designed to measure sort of return on the investment that you have in an academic space, because in an academic space, it's not like trying to measure increased profitability or save cost the same way that you would have in a corporate environment. So, Christine, if we can roll down to the next one, if you remember, there's implementation ROI, which is typically the first year. Did you implement with fidelity? What was the uptake? How did we get to leading indicators in terms of what students are saying about it, what teachers are saying about it, what kind of bright spots? And that's a lot of the first work that comes in the first year of that, to make sure when we do a large scale initiative, things are going the way that we intended in that first year to be. And then more long-term, 2 years out, 3 years out, when you're measuring direct impacts on the KPIs, key performance indicators, that were identified with each of these. You can scroll down again, please. So when we went through this, what we did is we'd actually talked to a number of other districts that implemented this to see what they had done and sort of understand best practices. And one of the ones that we liked a lot was this scoring metric to go through all of our key projects to say, okay, how would we score each of these? 11 different variables, check the box on any of them that apply, and what were the highest scoring ones. So you'll see that on the next page. When we did this, we had all the other chiefs that were involved in the key initiatives that are out there to say, okay, how do we score across all of these? And what we were cautioned by with the folks that had already implemented AROI in their districts is don't start with like a list of 30. Pick one or two under each key strategic priority that we have to say that'll be the test engine that we have to do this type of work. As since this is new to us, we've got a fair amount of work to do to build the institutional capacity for us to say, how do we track this going forward? How do we embed this into our continuous improvement cycle going forward? So you'll see here some of the highest ranked ones and some of the lower ranked ones too, but we had all the chiefs that had were participating in all the strategies do that type of ranking across all of the different factors that we'd identified on the prior page. And what that now leads to, if we scroll down to the next one, is, here are the ones that we've said, these are the ones we definitely want to look at for academic ROI going forward. Intercession, student success centers, student engagement, REST professional learning, our family learning sessions, community schools, and the equity center collaboration. And you'll see what the KPI that's now been identified for each of those in the right-hand column, and that'll be the key factor that we track over the long term to say, is this actually having the benefit that we think it's going to have? And we can roll down to the next one real quickly because I know we're short on time. So what happens next? So those KPIs that are on the prior page, we need baseline data. So I have a meeting later on this week with our Office of Performance and Accountability to establish the baselines for each of those KPIs. So we put a stake in the ground to say, what are we measuring against over the long term, coming off of the 21-22 year. Now, each of those plans, those 8 plans that we had, have action plans underpinning each of them that have key milestones. So those key milestones will now become our way of measuring implementation ROI to make sure that these projects were implemented with fidelity, that we did all the steps that we said we were intending to do in the first year. And inclusive of that will be work to sort of get voice of the customer, is the way I like to refer to it. Talking to teachers, talking to students. Do you feel like talking to parents? Do you feel like you're benefiting from these programs that are out there? And so what I anticipate is all that work is going to happen in the next couple of months. And as we get closer to the end of this current school year, we'll be coming back to the board periodically with an update, sort of like where we are in measuring this implementation ROI, and then making sure that we have the data in place the right way and the measurement ability going forward to say, are these things actually creating the type of impact we intended it to? And then embedding that in our continuous improvement cycles to say, it becomes basically a go, no go on funding. If we're finding that we're not having the impact that we thought we would, is it fixable? If it's not, should we stop spending money on it? If it's especially productive for us, do we want to spend more and broaden the program out in some way? And so what I'm anticipating happening as we build the capacity is that each year we're going to pick a similar number of projects that'll become then cohort 2, cohort 3, on down the line, so that we're broadening out this academic ROI sort of across the organization and going more deeply into the number of strategic projects that we have active at any given time. I think that was the last slide. Check me on that, Christina, please.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I know that was a mouthful, but I was trying to get it in before the 10 o'clock.
I thank you, Chairman Penn. Chief Penn, I'm sorry, Chief Penn, thank you. And I apologies for not providing you another 5 or 10 minutes. This is excellent work for someone who's had a little bit of business background, whatever. We've never had ROI in school. And so I think Christina and Chief Penn, this really should be a topic at the next board retreat to give us a little education on what academic ROI is. I think it really helps us understand how you're going to be constructing the dashboard. The other thing that I would say immediately is, if at all possible, this would be the one area I think the board and Chief Penn and the staff could partner in, and that's, you talk about getting that voice of customer, voice of community. I would certainly like to be part of that kind of meeting or discussion, at least to hear what you're hearing. Would be fabulous.
Yeah.
This is really good work. I know we pushed you on this. This is really, really good to me. Now, that being said, I'll yield to any other comments or questions from board members.
So I'll just say thank you, Chairman. I just say I completely agree with you. I'm really pleased to see the work that's been done here, and some of the fact that there's already been criteria, here's a framework, how we're going to score, and now let's actually dig deeper. Obviously, there's much more to talk about, but just really pleased. So thank you for this, and looking forward to the continued conversation.
Sure. And Christina, I think, is going to be sending out the link to this presentation. I'm not sure that went out before the meeting, so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
It is attached in board docs now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, this is definitely good stuff. We'd certainly like to hear this periodically. Let's, get a little follow-up progress. Is this is the right direction, it appears, from everything we've talked about. So with that being said, are we prepared to adjourn? I may be able to give you 1 minute of your life back. So that being said, thank you. And I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.